Welcome to The Spoken Nerd, the podcast about database technology. I'm your host, Connor McDonald, and in this episode, we finish off talking to Martin Bach. Anyone recent to Oracle will know him from his expertise with JavaScript in the database. So in this episode, we'll talk about the latest release of the database 23 AI, artificial intelligence in general, and also touch on what are some of the things that frustrate us and we would like to change with the Oracle database. I hope you enjoy it. In 2021, you joined Oracle. For me, that was a bit like, it was interesting as I did the same thing. I joined Oracle in 2015, and having been in the Oracle community for so long before that, I had a few people there was a bit of pushback. People sort of had this thing of you're going from the outside, the critical mind against the big machine, to the inside. I had a few friends that actually, I won't say nasty, but there was a bit of pushback. They're saying, yeah, you've sold out, etc., etc. Did you have any of that, or it all just went nice and smoothly?
No, not that I'm aware of, but it's kind of different now. So previously, I'm probably my own biggest critic. So previously, when I was presenting about things, I made sure that I've well researched everything, that what I say is correct at the time of the presentation. There is nothing, in there that might cause anyone any harm. Whenever there was licensing stuff or third-party stuff, I pointed that out. But inevitably, you can't know it all, because if I knew it all, I'd be self-employed and I'd be millionaire, right? So I don't know it all. And there is always this caveat that I add at the end of the presentation. You always test, what you see. Don't just blindly follow. Just because it's written doesn't mean it's right. All these kind of wise words. And now when I'm at Oracle, I kind of put myself into, maybe unconsciously, but under more pressure, because now everything as I say is kind of the official message. And so I double, triple, quadruple check everything that I'm publishing or posting, and also talking to lots of people within the organization to make sure that I actually get it right and that it's all correct. So from that point of view, I also think that the PM or the product manager or somebody working for Oracle at conferences, maybe there is something different from the community, that people kind of see you with a different set of eyes, because now you kind of know things that they may not know. And I feel it's slightly different, although nobody's ever said anything to me.
Funny story, when I joined Oracle, the year before, I'd given a talk about an upgrade from, I think, 11.1 to 11.2 for a customer running an extended distance cluster between two sites on AIX, running, I think, NetApp storage, direct NFS. So they'd picked a fair
I remember
bit of
that one. That was good.
technologies. And yeah, and in there, I talked about some of the hardships we had. And in some of those places, I was critical of the way we had dealings with Oracle support, as sometimes people are. And it's funny, when I joined Oracle, my manager at the time, Stephen Feuerstein, he said, that's great. He said, just be aware, you can never give that talk again. So, which was, I suppose, fair enough, but it's one of those funny things where I joke about it now, but I honestly think they're the kind of talks that people would appreciate from Oracle people, because all IT companies, Oracle included, and even when you're a solo practitioner and you're self-employed, at every level, every company likes to paint themselves in a position that's probably better than they really are, in terms of their knowledge, in terms of their practices, in terms of the processes, because that's just human nature. No one wants to get up and say, yeah, we really screwed up here, or we didn't do something right there. Everyone wants to get up and say, look how successful we are. But I think when it comes to honesty and integrity, I think if you want to win over customers, not just from a sales perspective, if you want to win them over, you tell them warts and all. The only challenge to that is, and so this is me defending Oracle, is if you tell people absolute all the details, warts and all, the people at the coalface appreciate that. The people at the C-level management go, this is a disaster, why did we get involved? They want to be told the glossy magazine story. So it's a no-win situation. But seeing as we're both at Oracle now, yesterday you and I sat in with 7,000 others on a LinkedIn broadcast about our launch of 23 AI. What are your thoughts on 23 AI? What appeals to you most? Not necessarily feature. What do you think is going to be, what's going to wow the customers the most, I suppose?
So maybe if I give some background on where in Oracle I sit, because Oracle is a pretty big organization when it comes to organizations as such. So I'm incredibly lucky again to have found the right manager, that the one with the umbrella. So I'm working for Gerald, and he is kind of in charge of the development developer experience, so to say, and things that, make life easier for developers. And that's exactly the reason why I joined Oracle. I wanted to help people get the most out of the software and teach them by blog posts or presentations what they can do to simplify their lives. So this is why 23AI is something very, very dear to my heart. I've been working with Chris Saxon and Loic Lefebvre from my team in putting together collateral about new developer features, and I've also given a few development related and focused talks at user group events over the past year or so. And we start the slides, and that is absolutely true in my opinion. We start the slides with saying that what we focused on with 23AI is to make it simpler to work with the software, and also to increase, by that same means, we increase developer productivity. And there are lots of features everyone can use without looking at particular frameworks or technologies. They're available kind of at the core of the engine to make things easier. Some of them are kind of special use cases, like, for example, we all know that JSON is very popular. It's schemaless, but if you use JSON as a data interchange format, and sometimes you don't get all the fields that you need in your JSON, so you then put them into your database, and later on in your process chain, you find out, hey, there is something that has gone wrong, and now there is JSON schema, so you can validate the input. So that's nice. I didn't think I would like it so much, but we don't need to say from Dual anymore. And I think you said that to me, or Mike said that, Mike Dietrich said that to me, when they come to user groups across the world. For some, this is the best thing since the invention of the sliced bread. That was you, wasn't it?
That might have been me at Kscope. Literally, people stood up and clapped.
Yeah.
In fact, I have a question for you. Why do people do that? Why is it such a big deal about not having the type from Dual?
I have no idea. But it is convenient. I give you that. When I'm jumping back to 19C and just type something, select blah blah blah, and it is become habit to omit it already. I can see why it's super convenient, although logically it's not such a big deal, is it?
I'm sitting on two sides of the fence, both presented to me by actual conference attendees. As I said at Kscope last year, people stood up and cheered. And as a result, the month later, I was at the India tour for the Yatra, run by SAI, the All India User Group. And so when I was doing my talk on 23C, hence now AI, I was thinking, I'm going to lead with this feature because I know from Kscope, this is going to be an absolute smash. And I go, select from Dual, someone's hand goes up. Already my head's grown to twice its normal size because I'm thinking they're about to say what a wonderful addition this is. And I say, yes, sir, how can I help you? And he goes, why does Oracle waste its time on these stupid features, these stupid enhancements? And I'm like, oh, okay, so we have some different opinions here.
Yeah.
I can see the appeal of both.
Yeah.
I can see the convenience factor, but I can also see, like, why do people get so worked up about it? But I do wonder if it's because one of the more common or popular open source databases, Postgres, doesn't have that need, and maybe it's a sort of a parity thing. Who knows? But yeah, it is funny how, like, it can evoke lots of emotion.
Another one that does evoke similar emotions is something that's what actually most of my time is spending on is having the ability to write JavaScript stored procedures. I don't want to call them stored procedures, but you can use server-side JavaScript in the database now. It's a super interesting feature from what it offers in terms of opportunities. But if you talk to somebody who's been writing PL/SQL for 20 years, and then they come, are you going to take away PL/SQL now? So no, we're definitely not. It's kind of something that's added in addition to PL/SQL and Java, so you get more opportunities to write code. But what's really interesting is how you can use third-party modules available on community portals in order to make use of them, so you don't have to write the same amount of code. And that's also something that I personally think is great with 23AI.
In terms of JavaScript in the database, because obviously I took some notes down on that because I knew I'd be talking to you, what do you think the best use case is? Where do you think the first piece of appeal? Obviously, like any feature, it normally takes a number of years before people come up with innovative solutions to it. But straight off the gate, what do you think people's first and best benefit will be from having JavaScript in the database?
This is based on talking to various users, and I've been I've been a lot more active in the Apex community than I was previously. And in talking to the Apex users, they sometimes said to me, or one of the feedback I had was, oh, this is great that we can do this now, because university graduates, they are familiar with JavaScript in almost likelihood. So if they come to us and we would like them to write Apex applications with that require a little more business logic, then we need to kind of cross-train them into PL/SQL. It's not a big deal because PL/SQL is fairly easy to pick up. And in my opinion, it's a very elegant language for what it's designed. But it means they need to kind of learn something else. Whereas now that you have got JavaScript natively available inside the database, all you need to do is change a dropdown and instead of typing PL/SQL, somebody can write JavaScript. So I think this is one of the big wins that JavaScript in the database offers. And the other one is also to use similar logic on the browser and inside the database. So for data validation, for example, there are lots of very well-known and frequently used modules out there that you can use, and so on and so forth. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we can do with these.
I remember back in the forms days, one of the marketing things we would say with forms, or Oracle would say with forms, is because forms in the client runs a PL/SQL interface, and in client server days, network latency was an issue, in a bigger issue than it is nowadays. One of the things they would show a demo is they would grab a PL/SQL module written in forms, and they would literally, in the GUI, they would drag it down under the tree item that points to your server, and hey presto, the PL/SQL that was running in the form is now running on the database and is fantastic. We tended to just sweep under the carpet the fact that yes, it was PL/SQL, but all the APIs were totally different. But putting that aside, the theoretical potential was you would have some code that was running at the client, and you could take that code, drag drop it into the database, and it would run unchanged. Do you see a similar potential there for JavaScript? Do you think we'll ever see the thing where someone has JavaScript running in the client and they think, this would be better in the database? Or is that, I think, a bridge too far?
No, I think this is the vision, but it's a similar situation for us as it was back then for you with forms. The JavaScript is a complex ecosystem, and it is very versatile, and it's got more permutations of anything that I've ever dreamed possible. And so there are various competing standards. And one thing that is very important for Oracle databases is security. So things that you typically do with JavaScript code is use a module that writes to the file system. That is something for security reasons that cannot be facilitated in the same way, because you could think of malicious code, think of a supply chain attack or something where somebody just opens a file on the file system and dumps your don't know what table to that, and then comes back with a USB stick, scoops it off the system, and then that would be data loss. Same thing is for networking. It's very dangerous to allow outgoing networking by default, because again, bad actor malicious code could open a port to the outside world and scoop off all the important company's data. So that's also something that needs to be carefully handled. So what we would like to do is we would like to be in a position where we can use most of the systems that are kind of pure JavaScript, most of that code, being able to use that within the multilingual engine, which powers the JavaScript server and server-side engine. And yeah, that's where we're heading for, so that developers can kind of get best of both worlds, get the security aspects or the auditing that they may need in their enterprise applications, all the defined rate access control that the database offers, and so on and so forth, while at the same time benefiting from the huge ecosystem that's out there in terms of modules you can grab.
I have to admit, I'm pretty excited about the JavaScript in the database for reasons that are unrelated to Oracle. And this may seem a bit strange. Probably over the last 6 months or so, floating around on Twitter and LinkedIn and stuff, has been the number of organizations, developer groups, etc., that are sort of confronting the same challenges that we had as Oracle with SQL 30 years ago. Namely, the more volume of code you have running on the client, the slower and more painstaking these things become. And so it's funny that the same community groups that have always said stored procedures are the definition of evil, we have these things like, oh yes, and we've just invented this thing called server-side React. It's not a stored procedure. Of course not. Of course it's not a stored procedure. It's just called server-side React. And you think about things like Node and things like this, where I think there's that slow evolution. JavaScript programmers going, there's probably some benefit to moving some of our code close to where the data is. And so I think that's where I think we'll get some real wins here, because as that mindset changes, then the concept of us at Oracle going, you can run your JavaScript close to data isn't going to have that emotional or visceral reaction from people going, oh, no, you're trying to make us use stored procedures and they're evil, etc. I'll talk a bit more about 23 AI features in a second, but first let's start simple. What about the name? Are you a fan?
It's kind of interesting. As I'm a non-native speaker, it doesn't roll off the tongue quite as easily as 10G or 23C, so 23 AI. I've got to get used to the pronunciation, but I think it captures the essence of what it's been. And I also think we had the cloud theme. I mean, when did that come out? 2011, was that? Probably 12C was kind of that time frame. So I guess we got that covered. I think I
It's
think
been done.
it's been, yeah. And coming up with something new, to me it sounds cool. I like the name.
I agree to the extent that in terms of the rolling of the tongue, I've always had this theory that for any kind of product, you're allowed two contracted words. And what I mean by that is like 11G. When 11.2 came out, no one said 11G2 because that becomes three words. You got 11.2. You had 11G, 10G, 11.2, 12C, 12.2.
Right.
It's always two words. Even 21, people said 19C, then they went 21. Some people said 21C because you can almost get 21 quick enough into a single word, especially if you're a lazy Australian dialect like myself, but very few people go 21C. So my only worry is that 23AI is a pretty big violation of that rule. It's definitely not two contracted words. I suspect the community will make this decision for us. They'll simply say it's 23. And maybe that's where we'll end up. I do agree. I think C was done. I would have liked to have seen just 23, but I'm more than happy with 23 AI as well. But in terms of AI, it does rely on the fact though that AI isn't some sort of hype or bust thing, because 10G is probably a good example, right? We went 10G and grid computing never really became the thing it was, because by the time it was mainstream, it became someone else's grid, hence cloud. There is that risk of putting AI in your product name, that AI becomes the sort of boom or bust hype cycle. People say one of the fundamental limitations of any AI technology is the issue with hallucinations. And people saying, oh, we're working on solving that. But hallucination is almost the working model for AI. We're generating information out of another base of information. And the fact that we're generating it, I would perhaps argue we're always going to be stuck with hallucinations. Do you think that'll marry well with the fact that generally when you're talking about databases, you certainly don't want hallucinations about your data?
Certainly not. And this is where it becomes kind of tricky. So when I was at university in 2002, we had a class on neural networks. And if you look at the science behind it, that was already quite complex. And the fast forward 10 to 15 years, I mean, it's not got any easier. And the science that is behind those models becomes kind of really, really hard to understand. I mean, certainly for me, but I guess that may be true for others. What we need to be careful with, I think, as an industry, is we need to be careful that we train people who may not be familiar with how the model has been generated and trained and what factors have been influencing it. But the result, it shouldn't be kind of taken as the truth. And then I think this is the big challenge that we'll have, that we need to have at the moment. I don't know how it's going to be in 5 years, but at the moment, if you throw something against a model and it comes back with a result, it may or may not be true. So you still need the experienced coder in terms of when you write code. Does that actually make sense? Is that correct code? Because I remember an anecdote where somebody asked, can you write PL/SQL for something you can't write PL/SQL for? And it came back with something that looked almost, but it wasn't. I guess we'll have to see over the next 2 or 3 years how it evolves. But I'm sure there is a lot of research being poured into that topic so that they get at least tone the hallucinations down or get it under control or have warnings and say, hey, don't trust this as.
Yeah, have some sort of confidence level or something
Yeah.
about it. Have to admit, my worry is not the technology itself. My worry is the source data.
Yeah.
Because already you hear people nowadays saying, oh, our blogs are now generated by AI. Sports Illustrated had some famous thing where some of their journalists were writing their articles with AI. My worry with AI is that we're actually in the best time that we'll ever have. Because at the moment, everything that AI is trained on was written by humans. Because AI didn't, all these facilities didn't exist. But if you fast forward 5 years,
Oh yeah.
I wonder how much of the next 5 years' content will be written by humans or written by an AI engine. And that's the data that's going to be used to train the next generation of AI engines. And so you sort of get this self-fulfilling prophecy or sort of a catalyst that basically takes what was great data, hallucinates a bit, makes it slightly invalid data, and then that becomes input to the next set of data, which becomes, it's like, remember the days when you would have you probably don't remember this, but we'd have a cassette tape and you'd make a copy for someone, and that copy was a little bit worse than the previous one, and then you get another copy, and just in the end it ended up with garbage. So just for anyone listening, a cassette tape was a audio medium that we used to use back in the day. You Google it, you'll get a picture. Just returning to the database, so besides JavaScript, which I know is your absolute baby and bread and butter, anything else jump out at you that you think will be really embraced by the community?
Something I would really like to see embraced by the community, in fact, is JSON duality views. And is one of the features that has been kind of peaked at a while back. I think 2022 at CloudWorld, it was first shown. There was a big announcement. And I quite like the idea because in relation to JavaScript, I also look at database CI/CD, so continuous integration and delivery using languages inside the database rather than just front-end languages. And as part of that, I've also looked into some frameworks and how they interact, Java frameworks, and how they interact with the Oracle database. And that's kind of, it's a lot of code you've got to write. I mean, if you're a seasoned Java developer, it is super easy to do so. But when you just get started, it's a bit of a learning curve. Now, the idea behind duality views is kind of that you store the data still in a relational format, but you kind of materialize that into what we call a duality view based on the JSON document that you would like to receive as the output. So that is something I really would like to see adopted in frameworks because it solves the problem of deduplication and redundancy on the data layer, whereas at the same time, it also solves the problem of presentation all the way up to the client side. So that is something I think it's got enormous potential. And now we just need to see, how the communities, the open source models embrace it and make it available to their developers. Because, JSON is something I learned in a lot more detail since I've been dealing with JavaScript, because JSON is JavaScript's object notation. And it's kind of related. And it's super easy to work with JSON in those languages. So yeah, I would really like to see this being taken up.
Funny enough, I really like not necessarily the feature, but the philosophy in terms of, as long as I've been involved in IT, which is way too long, if you wanted to deal with data in a certain way, that's how you stored it. If I want to deal with rows and columns, you stored it as rows and columns. If I wanted to deal it as JSON, you stored it as JSON. Those things were viewed as synonymous. Just the philosophy of saying, well, let's store it how it's best stored, and let's use it how you would like to use it, which is sort of a fairly common paradigm in all sorts of wakes of life, except databases or data. So we're almost playing catch up in that way. I agree. My theory, though, and this, not that I want to be too much of a pessimist, is my theory is I see JSON duality views a bit like analytic window SQL functions. Now, that's a strange comparison to make. The reason is when they first came out, you read the documentation, you read the premise, and you think, that's pretty cool. But very few people use them. It just looked a bit different. It felt a bit different. And then over the years, probably 1, 2, 3 years afterwards, people come up with certain requirements, and someone on the internet, whether it's Stack Overflow or a blog, says, oh yes, you can solve that with analytic window function. Then someone comes up with a slightly more complicated requirement, and they go, oh, by the way, window function will solve that too. And all of a sudden, window functions are probably the thing that blows people's minds the most. People absolutely love those functionalities, and it's commonplace now. And don't get me wrong, we don't always get it right in the SQL engine. You look at the model clause, that never really took off. It's mind-blowingly powerful, but it just hasn't had that adoption, whereas window functions have. They've become part of the SQL standard. I get the feeling JSON duality will be similar. It'll be out there, and I don't think many people will use it to start with because they've already written those 10 million line pieces of code that's talking to their ORM. But for new projects, some people are going to be going, is there anything we can do besides writing 10 million lines of code? Maybe this JSON duality is going to remove 6 million of those lines. But I think that the take-up will be only for new projects as opposed to existing code. So I think it'll take time. And I just hope that both the community and Oracle stick with it, because it's very easy when something doesn't have immediate uptake to go, well, let's just let that, languish. So I think as long as we're patient, I think it'll be a big success. I know we're starting to run long on time here, so I'll finish off to put you a bit of a challenge here. As opposed to talking about things that we have in Oracle, if you had to change something in the Oracle database, something that currently frustrates you, what would you change? And it can be anything. Yeah, I'm giving you free range here. What are some of the things that maybe frustrate you? They can be as small, or they can be broad, they can be conceptual, they can be functionality. What do you think we could do a better job at? What would we improve?
One of the things that immediately springs to mind that isn't directly related to the product itself is more related to the documentation. From a documentation point of view, what I would love to see is when we get into a topic, let's say the JavaScript developer's guide. I know that quite intimately, so I'm taking that as an example. So if we could have examples that can just be copy pasted, and maybe we can have less text in the introduction of a feature, and more kind of, as you say, I need a solution to my problem kind of approach to documenting things. And then we could have a series of appendices where we then explain at length and breadth as to why a certain, feature, which options you have, the gazillion options to certain functions that we have available, and so on and so forth. That would be pretty cool, because as a vendor of the Oracle database, we are in the unique situation where we don't have to go scurry for GitHub issues for a given project, or we need to find spots of documentation spread all over the web. In theory, it's all there, but I would like it to be more approachable, and that's what I try to do with our documentation team for the JavaScript developers guide. We try to make it, this is how it works, this is why it's good, and this is an example you can just copy paste into SQL or whatever IDE you use, and then run it, and you'll see immediately what it's good for.
I could not agree more. In fact, I can't remember who I was talking with recently, and I said the perfect Oracle documentation set would be the entries from, say, Tim Hall's site at the top of the document, and then the rest of it continuing on. I took an example, the alter table command. I don't know in 23 AI, but in 21C, the alter table command is 282 pages. It's one command. And I'm going, yeah, you're kidding me. It's ridiculous. And I would love to see at the top of that, here's how you add a column, here's how you add a primary key, here's how you change a data type, maybe add a unique key, maybe add a check constraint. Yeah, there's probably 10 things you do with alter table that cover 99% of the use cases. Unfortunately, there are, because of the power of our product, there's also 5,000 other things you can do with alter table. And they need to be there for people to find. But Joe Schmo, who's going, geez, I need to add a column, he's going to go look at alter table, and he's going to see this, this syntax diagram and just go, oh my goodness. So yeah, I would like to see that sort of that. I joked, I said, yeah, let's get Tim Hall's site at the top and his examples at the top, and then the rest of it. So we have the complete picture. So I agree with you there. I'll give you mine. This was a little bit controversial because as you and I both work in product, we don't work in licensing. I'm branching out here. I would like to see our options when we charge for them based on customer requirement. Now, to explain what I mean by that, because that's not a great use of words, is you think of something like real application clusters or active data guard. There's a whole chunk of customers that need that, and there's a whole chunk of customers that probably don't. If I'm running a corner store that runs 9 to 5 every day, the odds of me needing rack are pretty low. For a start, my system's down for 12 hours a day. I probably don't even need hot backup. Anything where there's the concept of whether people need it or not, I think we have a right as a company to charge or not charge for those things because they're opt-in. But there's a couple of things I think that every customer needs to have, and some of those things currently we charge for. Probably one example of that is perhaps on a lesser degree is partitioning. 5 years ago, I'd say no. 5 years ago, I'd say plenty of databases out there are small enough that never need partitioning. But the world's changed. The days of people removing old data from their database is gone. Nowadays, the archival phase of a project is always phase n+1, where the current phase is n. There's always the next phase of your project, no matter what phase you're in. So I think databases are going to get bigger. But I could live without that. Even though I'm a huge fan of partitioning, I love it, I could live without that. One thing I would want is transparent data encryption. I think that should be free for everyone because I think everyone wins for that. Because if you're a customer and your database gets hacked, you look bad as a customer. If you're a vendor and your database got hacked, people lose trust in you. But rest assured, people lose trust in the vendor that provides the database as well. We all lose. If company X running Oracle database gets hacked, company X is out of business and we look bad. Everyone loses when someone gets their database hacked. So I would love to see TDE just a core part of the product, and even to the extent that it gets to the point where you can't have an unencrypted database. It's actually not an option because it simply is not a function that we actually offer. You have to encrypt your data. That's what I'd like to see. And the only other thing I'd see probably functionality-wise, this sounds a bit weird, I would like to see read locks as an option. The ability to query some data and lock it for read such that other people can still lock it as well. Because sometimes, and I suppose our lock-free transactions might solve this, but often there's things where you want to lock a parent row so you can do things with the child row and then go back and update the parent row later without necessarily doing a select for update, without actually stopping other people. If we had read locks, then lots of people could issue a read lock against the same row. I've had to write solutions using DBMS lock for people in the past to do this. So I have a personal take on that. So anything else that springs to mind for you?
I think the installer, if we not the installer, but the database configuration assistant, if we could speed that up, that would be awesome. It takes a little while. I mean, you can say this has been mitigated in a way for customers with the multi-tenant option, because you can now create a PDB and that doesn't take any time at all. But creating the initial database, the container database, that takes a little while, and that would be awesome if we could speed it up.
I have to admit, shameless plug here. I'm not saying this is the perfect solution. I wrote a utility a while ago called Plugzilla, play on words. It's by no means spectacular. All it did is put an API around creating pluggable databases, in the sense that if I wanted to create one, I had a pool of available pluggables. So all it did was keep some in advance. So if you requested a pluggable, you just simply grabbed it, renamed it, and you were done. And that triggered the fact that I need to create one in the background now. So you always had 3 pluggables sitting in the wings waiting. It's not an idea of my own. I actually stole that idea from a talk I went to 20 plus years ago from James Mall, a good friend of ours, where he had a customer that was running VMware servers. And literally, rather than having a very expensive high availability option, they literally kept a batch of physical servers, Intel servers, in cupboards. And so what would happen is, if a server failed, they literally throw that one away, and while they're worrying about fixing it, they'd simply grab one out of the cupboard, plug it in, turn it on. There's your high availability. They always had a few servers floating around. So I like the idea of a few pluggables just floating around in the wings.
Floating around.
Because then you never have to copy the data. You just simply rename it and you're good to go. So that was Plugzilla. You can find it on my blog. I'll put it in the show notes. And on that note, having shamelessly plugged my own software, thank you very much for your time, Martin. Hopefully we'll see each other at a conference again soon. We both go to conferences fairly often, but we both live, unfortunately, on other sides of the world. Hopefully we'll get together soon. But very thank you for your time, and hopefully we'll see you either at a 23AI event, or, last question for you, what will the next version of the database suffix be?
Oh man, this is going to look a long time into the future. I have literally no idea. My Palantir is currently with someone else.
27 ST for Star Trek. Maybe that's where we'll go. Thank you very much for your time, Martin, and we'll speak again soon. Thanks for listening to this podcast. The music credit goes to Zanman from Pixabay Music.